fact that we have a choice in how we experience it, or the choice about how we respond to events. And Stephen Covey, again in review, he said, the proactive person responds to events on the basis of what? What? Morals, values, right? About decisions. Basically bases it on previously made decisions. So what might that look like? If you're, if, let's say, you're water skiing. Are there any water skiers in here? What's the worst thing that can happen when you're getting ready to go water skiing? What's the worst possible thing that could ruin your day as a water skier?
Choppy water.
Choppy water, wind, right? Yeah. Can you do anything about the wind? Much as you'd like to. You can't affect the wind in the least, right? So a proactive person, remember, we put a reactive person would see the wind, and what would be his response? Getting all ticked off, you know. And in the meantime, we might think, well, that's pretty wimpy to use that as an example. But if that's how we're operating moment to moment with everything, where everything that happens, we are always reacting to it, well, pretty soon, as we've discussed, the stress response is going to be like on all the time. And as we've already mentioned, that's bad news for the system. The proactive person, what would the proactive person do? How would the proactive person respond to the windy day water skiing? Yeah, to see how well I can, you know, work the choppy water, or
get the tube out.
Get the tube out. Pull the ski right next to the boat and surf. You know, all these kind of things that you can do instead of being upset about it. Well, I want to expand on this today and kind of explore how we can do that, because it sounds nice, right? It sounds nice. Oh, well, I just... And I don't want us to think, well, this is a Pollyanna attitude where we just look at the bright side of everything and think, well, that's going to fix everything. That's not what I'm talking about, what I'm going to be exploring today. But if we analyze how we respond to things and get used to practicing in better ways, then that becomes the natural way for us. So I'm going to show you how that works. Let me give you this. This is in your book, but I also want you to bring the book. This is a nice overview of it. Now, this looks pretty intense. Let me break this down, and then we'll show through examples how this works and how we can use this to our benefit. You'll notice that there are several columns here. The first column, degree of inner peace, which is my main objective for me. Everything about in my life is, how's my level of inner peace with whatever's happening? And if I know that my peace isn't very high, if I've not got any peace inside of me, then I know that I need to make some adjustments. And the rest of this kind of explores that. And similarly, the next column is usefulness. How effective is this towards either turning on or off the stress response? So you have above this, see this quite bold line here, right? Everyone see that bold line going across? Above that line, when we respond in these ways, it tends to lead towards less stress, keeps us out of the stress response. When we respond below the line, in those ways, then we tend to find ourselves with more stress. Remember, all stress begins with a thought. Okay? So this is what we're playing with. This is the root of it all. This is the very foundation of it. If we can get this, kind of expanding on last time, if we can get this, then we realize that we can prevent most, not all maybe, but most of the stress that we have by changing how we're thinking. This is kind of a guideline. So anyway, the perception that we have, that column there, when we say yes to what is happening, we tend to, that's the opposite of saying no or resisting, which is below the line. And then the different ways, and when I was putting this together several years ago, I tried to think of all the different ways that people commonly respond to situations. And these are, let me make I'll say this several times today, but these are when we find ourselves in situations over which we have absolutely no control. Okay? Make a mental note of that somewhere, or write it down somewhere. This doesn't have anything to do with, no, I shouldn't say that. It does relate to a large degree to situations that we do have some control over, but this entirely works in situations when we can't do anything about it. We'll give some examples to kind of exemplify this, but think of this in terms of those kind of situations where we can't do anything about it. We can't have an influence on the situation. It's just happening and we're in it. And we have a choice about how we respond to it. Okay? So when I was putting this together a few years ago, I was kind of thinking about what are the different ways, and I was watching, I've watched a lot of human behavior. I love watching human behavior. And I kind of was categorizing. It seemed to me, and if you can think of something, this is still a work in progress, so if you can think of another way that people commonly respond to situations that might be in addition to these 7 or 8 here, please let me know, because I'm absolutely open to it. I'm absolutely open to other ways, but these seem to be the most frequent and most common ways that people, when something happens, this is how people commonly respond. Then the next one, the next column is, this is what we say in our heads. This is the thought that we have when we're responding in those ways. So, and we'll explore how this sounds when we get into it, but basically, this is what the mental chatter that we say when it's windy and we're water skiing. What do we say to ourselves at that point? What choices do we have? Or what are some common ways that we would say that? And then the last, which I'm most interested in, is what's the resulting feeling that comes from that thought? Remember, I've said this before, I think, in here. Here's something that I'm absolutely sure of, and the more I study this, the more I'm sure of. This is how our thoughts and emotions work. We have a thought, and it always leads to a feeling. Okay? Any feeling that we have is always preceded by a thought and never the other way. Is this new? Have I mentioned this before? Here? Yes? Okay. So, if you're after a feeling, which really is what we're after most of the time, we're after happiness, we're after joy, we're after a feeling of calmness or serenity. Well, if you want any of those things, the way you get them is by the thoughts that will lead to those feelings. And no other way. Depressed people, by and large, are depressed because they think depressing thoughts. Angry people are angry for the sole reason that they think angry thoughts. There's no other reason. Nobody makes them angry. Nobody can, remember, we decided this last week, nobody can make you angry. You are angry by the thoughts you have. So what are those thoughts that create that feeling? And that's what we're going to explore today. Really, there's only one thought. If you look at anger all by itself, there's only one thought that you have that creates all the feelings of anger that you've ever had in your life. There's only one. It's always the same thought. Isn't that cool? So if you find out, we'll explore what that is. But if you can figure out, especially if you're a hothead, there's people in here, hotheads, ticked off at everything. Well, if you figure out that it's your own thoughts that are making that way, and you, oh, I can change that, bam, no more hothead. You've immediately eliminated that emotion in your life. And I'm not saying at all when we get into this that you shouldn't have these emotions. What I am saying is you have to understand that you're the one constructing those emotions. It's okay. It's okay to be sad or angry or frustrated or jealous or whatever. But it's not anyone else who's doing it to you. Ever. Okay. All right. With that in mind, let's use some examples. Somebody give me a situation that you were in recently, maybe, where you found yourself getting really upset about. Does anyone have anything that fits that recently? You do?
Yeah. I went into work last Friday and they set up the schedule. And typically I work about 4 days a week. And so I went in there and they had really got rid of my Friday. So I was really upset because, you know, I need the money. So I was like, wait a second, where is my Friday? Why don't I have my Friday on my schedule? That made me pretty upset.
So we'll say lost working days, okay? That you needed to work, or you preferred working, right? Okay. Does anyone have anything else that, Scott, you got something?
I was at work last week and we were really busy at work and I saw my coworkers sitting around talking about helping out.
Oh, okay, so lazy coworkers. Now, in both of these, you may have some influence over that where you could maybe do something about it. You know, you can go in and resolve it, right? And you could say, come on, and you see we're busy. And I'm going to keep that as you could still do something about it, but in the instant that you saw it, right then, you may not have wanted to or had the chance to do anything about it, but you still had the chance to respond to this event that's in your experience, right? Let me use a few others. Let's say, we'll use boring teacher. Okay, that's a good one. Trying to think. Okay, a few years ago, does anyone have anything else? Anything? You got one?
I was at work and it was like my second day and my manager yelled at me because I didn't sit down and sleep at like a party of 14, but we didn't have anywhere to sit in. She was like yelling at me.
Okay. Being yelled at. And you weren't sure how to, you weren't quite sure how to handle it because you were brand new into the job?
Well, I was mad because there was nothing I could do about it. All the seats were taken. There was nothing.
Oh, there weren't any seats available for him.
Yeah, there was
Oh.
nowhere that we could sit.
Beautiful. Okay, that's a good one. You have one?
Yeah, I had a game actually last night, a soccer game, and it was raining and storming, and we can't do anything about the weather really.
My son played his soccer game. Why
I
can't
know,
you
it's
do that?
horrible. It's cold.
Are you on the school team?
No,
So what?
it was just rec.
A rec game? Okay. But you wanted to play, right?
Somewhat.
I mean, if it weren't raining, you would have loved to have played,
Mhm.
but it was raining, so they canceled it?
No, we still played.
Oh,
in the
you had to
rain.
play in the rain.
Yeah.
Okay, so played in the rain, but you didn't want to. Good one, okay? Any others? I know we got.
I broke my phone last night.
You
I fell in
broke
a
your
puddle.
phone?
And the puddle like that big, but it broke and I went up to Singular and they won't do anything about it.
Broke. Okay, that's a good one. Let me just throw in one more. I have a daughter who, she's off to college now. But while she lived in our house, well, the word clean does not exist in her vocabulary. Every bit of her existence in our house was like, and I don't know if this is an appropriate thing to say, have you ever read the comic book, The Peanuts, Charlie Brown? And there was that one guy named Pigpen, where the dirt's just following him. My daughter's not quite that bad, but if you go down, if we're in my house, and we even made a whole floor for her, the basement, so that she could have her own place. Because we were tired of how busy or how messy she is around where all the other bedrooms are. So we made the basement. So we made a bedroom, and then there's a bathroom and a family room over here. And so when you walk down the stairs into her bedroom, there's no floor. There's no, you can't see any signs of, it's just clothes, books, and papers, and stuff she's bought all over the floor, and all over the covers, and she's got about this much space on her bed to sleep on, and the rest is stuff. And then there's a line of stuff going from her bedroom through the family room, and then her bathroom is similarly just as bad. I mean, this is what we see, regardless of how much we like it otherwise. Okay? So we'll use that one. Daughters. Messiness. Okay? Now, here's what I'd like to do. I want to go through this page, and let's look at each level going from the bottom to the top and ask ourselves, how would this sound in our head if we're functioning at this level? Okay? In other words, what would we be saying to ourselves if we're at each of these levels going up, and this is starting at attachment, judgment, so on, going up? Okay? And then notice also, what's the resulting feeling that we'll get automatically by thinking in those ways? Okay? So, let's take the first one. You come to work and you realize in that moment you don't get to work as much as you would like to. Okay? Now, if you're in attachment, okay, let me hit this bottom one, and there's no, one's not necessarily better or worse than the other below this big line. These are just different ways that people seem to respond to things that are ineffective, that lack inner peace, that tend to lead toward bad feelings. Okay? So this lowest one that I have here is called attachment or rightness. And so what we say in our heads when this is happening is we say, this must be this way. This should be We use words like should a lot. Like in this instance, she would be saying what? What would you be saying if you were attached to how things ought to be?
I should be working.
Yeah, I should be working on this Friday. Okay? What would we be saying to ourselves if we see these lazy coworkers? What would we say to ourselves in this instance? Looking at that bottom box right there, where we use words like must, have to, need to, should, or should have. What would we say?
They must be out there helping out. And we're busy, we should be out there.
Yeah, these guys are at work, they're getting paid, they should be working. Okay? Boring teacher. What would you say to yourself?
Should stay home.
What did you say? What did you say?
Stayed home.
I should have stayed home. Well, you're here, okay? And you're listening to this guy and stuff just keeps flooding out of his mouth. Just, he's throwing up all over everyone with his words. Nobody's enjoying it. What are you saying to yourself in that instance when you're in the classroom? Besides, I should have stayed home, which was also a useless thought.
I'd be going to all the things I need to do.
No. That's a useful thing to do. I'm talking about when you're at this unuseful place. Okay, what are you thinking to yourself?
Can you just stop talking?
No, that's how you solve it. What are you saying if you're resisting what he's saying? You're saying, he should be more interesting. He should do something different than this. I paid a lot of money to come to this school, or my parents did, or somebody did. I'm here, and I'm spending he should be more interesting. Now, what's the problem with that thought? Yeah, he's not. No matter how much he tries, he can't be more interesting. And as much as you'd like him to be otherwise, he won't be. It's a useless thought. I once went to this conference where we were talking about these kind of things, and the lady who was talking about this, presenting her little class, she said, really what you need to do is just stop shooting all over yourself. That's kind of, shooting. But that's what we do a lot. We think to ourselves, okay, how do we feel, or what do we say to ourselves in this level when somebody's yelling at us? What are we saying? Not to fix it, but what are we saying when we're resisting it? Yeah, you don't have any right to yell at me like that. Problem is, they're yelling at you. What are you saying when you show up for the game and it's raining? What's your main thought? Yeah, if we're playing soccer, it should be nice outside, not raining. What's the problem with that thought? What? Yeah, it's raining. You can't do anything about the fact that it's like a shower out here. Which it was yesterday, wasn't it? I mean, about that time, you went outside, it was like being in a shower. Finally got my card. You broke your phone. You broke your phone. What are you saying in this level? What do you say? What might you say? I'm not saying this is what you did, but what might you say if you're at this level?
Just be upset. I know my friends are saying at least you buy a new phone now. Like it's an
Okay.
excuse to buy a phone.
Now they went higher, but if you were just being ticked off about it, what would you be saying? I shouldn't have done that. Gosh, phones should be able to handle being dropped, because everyone drops phones. Is that a useful thought?
No.
Now, my daughter, I walk down the stairs. I cannot do anything about the fact that everything's a mess. I walk down the stairs, I open the door to a room, and what's my mental chatter when I'm in this mode? This should be cleaner. wrong with her? She has a brain. She can do something with this room. I've told her 1,000 times. Now, there's two interesting things that go along with this. Two really fascinating things. When we think to ourselves that thought, this should be otherwise than the way it is, what's the resulting emotion we frequently get? Okay, annoyance. What else? Could get angry, frustrated. Can you see the natural effect of thinking in that way? Now, here's the next interesting thing, is this works 100% with relationships. If I am in that mode and I see my daughter soon thereafter, and in my mind I'm thinking, you should be clean. This isn't how it should be. And we start to have our own communicate. We start to talk. How's that communication going to go? Why do you think that? Yeah, and what's she likely to do if that's how I am with her? Screw you, Dad. I don't want any of this. It's my room. I can do whatever I want. And then we're fighting, right? Just about all relationship problems, this is the problem, is people are responding to each other below the line. They're saying, you should be different than you are. What's the problem with that thought? They're not. It's exactly right. They're not different. They are who they are. And no matter how much you want them to be otherwise, they are not. And to the extent that you think they should be otherwise, is how much you'll be fighting. Nobody has arguments when you're operating above these lines. When you're below the line, this is when arguments happen. You should have called me. Told me you were going to come home late. So that's the bottom level, or one level of below the line. The next level, which is equally useless, but we do it all the time, is where we put some kind of a judgment on the situation. We put some kind of criticism or some kind of analysis in a negative light on whatever is going on. So, let's use examples. So, lost working days. So your work, you look at your schedule, and what do you say in that instance, in this level? What's the mind chatter?
Would that be like, oh, are they trying to fire me now?
No, that would be like, that stupid boss. What's wrong with her? And then you go back down. She should give me her own time, that idiot. How many of you have ever been, I know it doesn't happen to you guys, but how many of you, you've been driving with somebody and you hear somebody calling somebody a name 2 cars up? Jerk of a drive. I mean, Utah drive home, you're just typical of Utah drivers. As if that will help your traffic go more smoothly. I've seen people in cars have heart attacks, getting upset over somebody, because they're down here going, you idiot, what's wrong with you? You should be driving faster. Why are you so old? Can't you see? And it's not affecting that person at all. But it's affecting the person saying it. Crazy. You see that? So, lazy coworkers. What do you say? I mean, we've already called them a name, lazy. Worthless. Boring teacher. Well, what kind of names we threw up the adjective there? God, he's boring. He is the worst teacher I've ever seen. Problem with that? Yeah, it's just really, I mean, if we could analyze, I've studied this quite deeply, and this may be kind of new to you, but if we could analyze the physiology that takes place whenever we resist something. There's like cancer hormones that just, or cancer cells that just go crazy inside of us when we resist things. There really is a physiology to this that goes well beyond us just feeling good. That really, I mean, this is kind of sideline to this, but if you go on a roller coaster and you hate it, no matter how much fun it is for somebody else, if you go on a roller coaster and you hate it, you actually create cancer cells in your body. You go on the same roller coaster and you love it, you create cancer-killing cells in your body. Our body's always listening to our thoughts. Always. And whenever we have happy, pleasant, joyful thoughts, we create a similar physiology, and the same's on the other side. So this is just helping us to get some control of that. Okay? Somebody yells at you. What do you do? I mean, the guy who yelled at me when I was driving, remember that last week? What would it sound like for me if I were at that level? What would I say back to him? Or at least think? He's a really good jerk? Oh, big jerk. I've heard somebody call it a good jerk before. You're a really good jerk. Yeah, I mean, I would do the same back to him, right? Playing in the rain. What might this sound like at this level? Really, I mean, help us out here. What might...
This is stupid.
Good. Yeah. Is that what it sounded like? Yeah, it did. Now, still had to play. Is it possible? Now, a lot of people say, well, that would be dumb for it. Nobody would like to play in the rain. I'll bet I could find 10 kids right now who would love to play soccer in the game in the rain yesterday. I wouldn't have been one of them. But we're starting to understand that we got some choice in the matter. Let's choose a higher level. My daughter, broke the phone. What would you be saying at that level? What words might you be saying in your mind when, oh, jeez. That is making a judgment about it, or blaming, or some kind of criticism. What would you say about your phone?
I could have blamed my mom because I was helping her carrying and stuff. And
Oh, good. Give somebody else, blame somebody else for that problem. Good. What else?
Can you ever blame yourself for it?
Oh,
with
all
that?
the time.
Because I was just talking about that last week. I lost my camera up in the mountains, and we walked back up there in the one hike, and I never found it. And I was so mad at myself for not being, like alert and paying attention when I put it, or watching it fall out, or whatever happened to it. And it just went eating at me like all week. So there's nothing I can do about it.
Perfect
Because I
example.
lost.
That's such a perfect example. We do that all the time, don't we? Oh, what an idiot I am. How could I have done that? And then it just eats away and stuff. You lost it. You can't do anything about it. If you looked hard and still didn't find it. But we think for some reason if we keep playing that loop film of self, recrimination, self-penalizing, that it will help somehow. It never does. But we think it will. So I don't know why we're programmed to do that. We've all done that. It's an excellent example. My daughter, when I go down the steps and see her room, what might that sound like? Man, you're a slob. You are such a slob. You're so sloppy. Now, if that's how I am with her, when we have conversations, how will that conversation go? if I have that in the back of my head, you're such a slump. And will we have loving, kind words with you? No, it won't happen. You're such an idiot. You're such a, whatever names we give to somebody, that's how we see them. And rarely can we get it right. You know, think about all the life experiences you've ever had in your life. And for somebody to try to pin it down as, you're such an idiot, how could they possibly know? How many life experiences have you had in your life to this moment? Millions, right? And for somebody to try and say, well, you're sloppy, and think they're getting it right, it's impossible. And here's one other thing I think is interesting about judgment. Have you ever noticed that people who are really self-confident, people who are really self-assured, have really high self-esteem, how often do they put other people down? What?
Pretty much never.
Why don't they?
They don't have to build themselves up.
See, I think that you're so right. When somebody is putting somebody else down, what they're essentially trying to do is make themselves feel superior somehow. Oh, you're such an idiot. I'm so glad I'm not. And in reality, nobody's superior to anyone. Nobody has any more worth than anybody else, period. It's impossible for you or you or you to have more self-worth, more value than me. It's impossible. But for some reason we've decided, oh, my ego is better than yours. It's so warped. But we do it anyway, thinking it's useful. It's not. And the results we get, false pride is probably the most common one. He's so boring, and I'm superior, is what the next line always happens to be in our head. We don't say it out loud to ourselves, but we're still saying, I'm superior. Nobody's superior. The next one, and I'm going to try to go this a little faster, we're spending too much time here. Resistance. There's a saying that we use in the other class we spend in emotional wellness that I really like, and it says this: that which you tend to resist tends to persist. Anything that you say to yourself, this should be different than it is, will continue to stay the way it is. That which you resist tends to persist and grow. So when you resist something, you're saying essentially, I wish this were different than it is. It has the same feel as that part down there in the bottom of attachment, right? That's where you're saying this should be different. You're essentially saying, I wish it was different than this, what's showing up. I wish it weren't raining. I wish my daughter would clean her room. I wish this guy would be more interesting. I wish that he wouldn't have yelled at. I wish those guys were working. Now, what's the problem with those thoughts? You can't make it be that way. I remember on one occasion, I was riding my bike. I do a lot of bike riding, and I was riding my bike from my home in North Ogden to Brigham City. There's that 89, Highway 89 that goes between Pleasant View and Brigham City. I was riding up on that road, and I've ridden on that road quite a few times, and suddenly, as I was riding, I noticed this truck coming up, and I could tell, you know how you can tell, if you ride a lot, you can kind of tell where the cars are in relation to you, and I was riding, and all of a sudden I felt this. I saw it at the corner of my eye, this something coming at me. And I turned, and in that instant there was this bag of McDonald's or something that hit me in my, in my shoulder. Didn't hurt me in the least, but, and then I saw these three teenagers driving off, you know, laughing and we got you and driving, you know, and I couldn't do anything about it. You know, and in that instant, I had the choice. I thought, okay, I could either be right, kids should not do that. Certainly shouldn't litter, but they also shouldn't throw stuff at me. Those idiots, those juvenile delinquents, gosh, what's wrong with them? See how I'm going, staying below the line? Man, I wish that would have missed me, or I wish they would have gone somewhere. I wish I wouldn't have even come on this road today so that that wouldn't have happened. Which, you know, as that happened, for an instant I thought all those three things. And then, what happened next was then I caught myself and I went, oh, can I go above the line? So I always have this in the back of my head, because I really like to feel peaceful. Most of all, I like to feel peaceful. So I've learned how that works for me, is staying above the line. So how does this look? Let's go above the line and see, how does this look for us? How will this sound for us? Because we have to practice, because we're not trained. We're trained to think down here. Idiot. Stupid kids.
Where does revenge fall into place and getting even? Like,
It's resistance.
it's resistance?
Yeah, I wish you were different. I wish, I'll get you back. Because it shouldn't have been this way.
Okay.
Yeah. So, the next one, and this is going to sound really weird, because you'll think, oh, nobody thinks like that. And the reason why I put this in here is because sometimes for some of us it's not real easy to just go all the way to the top level of, you know, accept and embrace and wonderful you. Some of us, that's a hard push. So there is, I've stuck this first one in there to kind of get us above the line, so we're at least staying peaceful inside. We call this observance. When we get to mindful next week, we'll understand how wonderful this is. But for now, observance just simply means you are doing nothing more than noticing what's happening. And it sounds kind of like, and you don't give it anything else. No, it sounds really silly. But watch how this works. Watch how different you feel when you respond this way to how you feel when you're below the line. So, you lost working days. How might this sound in your head if you, I'm not saying this is easy, but if you were going to respond this way, what might this sound like when you look at the calendar? What would you say to yourself at that level?
I don't know, we have been slower at work, so I'm not believing you.
Okay? Don't add too much to this. Don't add too much to this part. If those guys are lazy, it might sound like, I'll help you out. Oh, these guys really aren't working. And you put a period there. You don't add those idiots, they should be working more. You just, oh, I'm noticing. Because you can't do anything about it. So you put a period, oh, I'm noticing those guys really aren't working. Period. Now, let's go on to the next one. Boring teacher. What could you say when you're in this mode of the teacher just keeps talking and talking? Okay, that's kind of a, that almost, you could say something like, wow, those words just keep on happening. Period. Don't add anything more to it. See, here's another thing I know about below the line. When you're in resistance to something, how fast does time move? Dreadfully slow. That's an indication you're resisting something. You ever been on an airplane? I was coming back from Hawaii a year, not last summer, but summer before. And I happened to, my whole family was in one aisle and I had to be by myself. And don't, think I'm mean or something, but I happen to have to sit between two huge people. They were huge, and it's a long ways. Sitting like this. And I didn't want, sometimes you like chattering on planes, but this particular ride, I didn't want to talk to anyone either. I just wanted to read. And these guys wanted to talk. That was the longest plane flight in human history. And all I was doing the whole time was resisting. Gosh, what's wrong with these guys? I should be sitting somewhere, and I couldn't sit anywhere else, or else I would have. It's full. Resistance, time slows down. That's a good indicator to you. When time's going and you're getting tired, that's another indication. Some of you in here today, resisting this, I could tell because you're falling asleep. It's not, it's my fault because I'm making you bored, right? No. But when we're above the line, we're not in resistance, so if somebody's yelling at you, what do you have the choice of doing in this instance, in this level of observing? What could you say?
On which one?
Somebody's yelling at you. You're saying a lot of words, and there's a lot of energy behind those words. You can give the right to say it that way. Just as much as, oh man, you're really ticking me off. Have you ever watched two people fighting with each other, but you're not in there? You don't get in it. You just watch it. Well, that's what you do when they're yelling at you. I say to do that, but you have the right to do that. Playing in the rain. What might you say at this level? I'm noticing that
It's raining.
it's raining, and we still get to play. Okay. Now, what do you not have happen when that's your thought? Yeah, you don't have that associated anger going along with it. If that's your thought, remember, the emotion always follows the thought, so we have a thought that's constructive instead of destructive. We get calmness instead of anger. That's a better emotion for me than anger. I don't like it when I'm angry. Some of you might. Some of you might like to feel angry. It bothers me when I'm angry. When you broke your phone, what would you say at this level? What would you say? What would go through your head at this level if you were just in the observation mode?
Must have fell out of my pocket.
That's what happened. I notice it's broken now. Period. And as you put the period there instead of comma, and that really sucks. Instead of saying that, use the period. Oh, okay. My son, we were playing baseball and happened to throw a baseball and it broke one of our home windows. Window's broken. Now, if I would have operated function below the line, how would that have sounded? Oh man, come on. What is your problem? Can't you hit it straight? But as window's broken. We'll handle it. Not only did I retain my own balance, but I also, he wasn't afraid to be around me for the next half hour. Isn't that cool? Now, going up, and I'm going to combine, as we did in the book, allowance and acceptance, and kind of make that one and the same. So, and what that looks like, has anyone studied, how many psychology people in here do we have? or if you've taken a psychology class, we all taken the Psych 101 or whatever it is. Did you study Abraham Maslow and his hierarchy of needs? Remember that? What was at the top?
Self-actualization.
Self-actualization, right? And Maslow, who studied this, he went around the world. What he did, if you ever want to study an interesting person, Abraham Maslow was incredibly interesting. He went around the world and he didn't look for sick people like most psychologists did and do. He looked at really well people, people who were highly functioning. And he said, I want to see what makes people peak performers, self-actualized. And he said, one of the most common traits of people who were self-actualized is they're accepting of others. They're accepting of situations. They're accepting of what is. In other words, they don't say no to what is. They say, this is what is. And I'm okay with it. Does that make sense to everyone? He said, this is what is, whatever it is, and they added a comma, and I'm okay with this. Which is different than, and I'm not okay with this. The physiology is different. The psychology is different. We feel better when we say, comma, and I'm okay with this. I like there's a metaphor, I stuck it in the book, but it's so good. When you have, imagine this, you have a cork that's floating down a river. This is a Chinese little story, it's so cool. You have this cork that's floating down the river. I know corks don't talk, but if it could, it's floating down this river and it comes upon this huge boulder that's sitting in the middle of a river. It's right in its way, and the boulder and the water goes around the outside, but it comes upon this boulder. Now naturally, what is this cork not going to say when it encounters this boulder? It's not going to say, bottom, you shouldn't be in this river, this is my river, stupid boulder. Gosh, what's your problem? Man, I wish I were in a different river. See what we just did, the bottom three? No, what does the cork do? What? Yeah, it goes, oh, this is what is, okay. And it kind of floats around. And it retains, if it had a soul or whatever, retains its peace. I love that story because so often things happen and instead of saying, no, people say, oh, okay, broken window. Oh, okay, they're not working. Okay, I guess I'm not working. Maybe I'll find something else to do. Oh, okay. You know, that's how teachers are at this school. They can't help it. And I'll do something else with my mind while he just blabbers on. Oh, okay. I can accept that phones are crappily made. And I'll just get another one or do without a phone. That'd be even more nice. You see the difference? When I go down to my daughter's room and I say, this is how she is. I'm okay with it. Teenagers can't help it. I hope that's not the case. I hope do they grow out of it? Do people? I hope someday she grows out of it. For her husband's sake, anyway. Now, if that's how I am with her, oh, that's okay. No, I understand that's how you have to be right now. What's our relationship going to be like then? Yeah, we'll have a good conversation. And if I'm not attending in my mind to how bad I think the mess is, then it's not going to be an issue. And and I get peacefulness, and we get a good relationship. Now, obviously, it's not going to change that messiness, but what will happen is it will increase the likelihood that in the future she might take my suggestions to maybe clean it up a little. A lot more than if I said, gosh, come on, get it clean. It's my house. It's not your house. I'm allowing you to live here. See the difference? Can you see the huge difference in how that is with relationships? When we're accepting of others, when we're accepting of situations, when we're allowing people to be as they are. Totally transforms things. And then, when we're in that mode, what's the natural result of those thoughts? As far as feelings, what's the natural consequence of thinking in those ways? When my son breaks the window, I stay calm. I stay peaceful. That's what I'm most interested in. Now, the highest, well, discovery, this is a cool one. This is where you take situations and you become the little Einstein, the little scientist, the little, inquisitive person about situations. And this is really a lot of fun if you want to do it this way. And it usually sounds like, well, I wonder what would happen if, or what might be the result of, or what can I learn from this situation? So you go to work and you notice, well, no working days, like no Fridays to work. What might you say in that situation, in this situation of discovery, that would keep you peaceful, calm, happy, but also in the discovery mode?
I wonder what would happen if I tried to do something else, or to get a second thought.
Okay. What could happen if maybe it's a good time for me to look for another job, and maybe I might find one that'd be even better than this, that would be, I'd get to work the amount of hours I want, and I'd maybe enjoy it more. Okay, that's a much more constructive way of thinking. Okay, lazy coworkers. What could you say in your head that would be interesting in this situation when you look over at these guys who really aren't working? Help me out.
Is this for the discovery one?
Yes.
You could maybe say, I wonder what would happen if the manager won.
Oh, yeah, good one. Wouldn't that be cool if that manager walked in right now and she saw those guys just wasting that? That would be fun to watch. I'd love to watch that happen. Wonder what's going on in their lives so that they have to be so lazy. They must be having some real emotional. You can make up whatever you want. We do that anyway in most situations. Boring teacher. Now this is where you can get constructive and useful in your time while you're sitting in class resisting or potentially resisting what he's saying. What could you say to yourself? I do this all the time. I don't know how many times we sit in places where it's useless for us to be there. Right? So what could you do instead that's at this level? Think. Really, all you have to do is say, what else could I put my mind on now that would be interesting for me besides what's happening up there? And then I'll have all kinds of thoughts. Oh, I can do my homework, I can text me, I can do 18 other things with my mind. Because I asked that question instead of just sitting there sniveling, oh man, I wish this guy would finish. See the difference? That's the one question what else could I be doing now when I can't do anything else? And then all kinds of things. Oh, I can work on my next class where I got to study for something. Get out my cards, I can write something, I can act like I'm meditating. take notes only, right? Work on my mind mapping and get myself organized. Isn't that cool? Playing in the rain. What could you say at this level? Discovery. What could you say? Wonder how sopping wet I could get. And then I wonder if I could even have a fun time doing this. Because some people do. Let's see what happens when we just have a blast. It'll get a little cold. My daughter's busy, messy room. What could I say that's in this mode rather than being in resistance to it? I go in the room and I say, wow, I wonder what, there's lots of notes here. I wonder who's writing to her. I wonder what they're saying. I wonder what kind of clothes kids are wearing nowadays. And how's that different from what we wore 30 years ago? Oh, they're the same now. Now, if that's my attitude, how will we be with each other? As long as she doesn't know I read anything. The highest level, and I do believe this is the highest level, and this is what transforms us into, I don't know what the right way of saying this, but where we become impervious to all outside influences negatively affecting us. If we can look at everything with a sense of thankfulness, with a sense of appreciation and gratitude. Good things always happen to us when we are in this mode.
How would that sound with the McDonald's thing?
You mean when they threw that at me?
Yeah.
So I might say something like, man, I'm so glad that I can even have the health to ride on this road back. It's 20 miles, or however long it is, 11 miles, what is it, 22 miles I think it is from my house to, I'm so grateful that I can have these interesting experiences where I can practice thinking more correctly toward these boys. And that I have a cool bike that can ride it. I mean, my bike's worth more than my car. And how cool is that I can? Which is where I ended up. I really did. I tried to do this in my head. I tried to go to what would be the best way to think about this, because they were long gone, and even on my best days, there was no way I was going to catch them riding. So there's nothing I could do about them. So I thought, here I am left to myself and the litter. And I thought, the best thing to think about was that very thing. I said, I'm so grateful that I can have these interesting experiences now, where I can practice enjoying the varieties of life. Because otherwise I could be just sitting home watching TV, and that would be a waste of time. But I'm out riding in the fresh air. Does that make sense? So, what could you say when you have the lost working days?
I'm glad I even have a job.
Yeah, it's so great I even have a job. Boring teacher, what could you say to yourself? Yeah, 1% of everyone in the whole world gets this, what I have. How cool is that I'm able to even come to this place that has carpets. And, we have students in our program been to Africa, and they show pictures of what it's like over there. And I'm not trying to demean Africa, but the conditions are really backward. How cool it is that we have air-conditioned rooms and lighting, and we have interesting people around us with whom we can interact and become friends with. And it's safe, and we're not at war with some other country, and we're not, all these kind of things. How cool is that? Now, what's the feeling that you start to have when those are your thoughts? Really, be serious. What are the feelings that follow thankful thoughts? It's like joy. It's like, you know, you're driving a car, you're all ticked off, or what's the opposite of that? You're man, I'm thankful I have a car. I'm thankful there's roads. You know, my ancestors from 1850 back, they didn't even know what a road was. They drove horses, took them there. They drove in covered wagons to go what takes me 2 hours, or 4 hours, or 6 hours. Took them days to get this. It took some of my ancestors, they had to go, if they wanted to go from the East Coast to the West Coast, they had to go all the way around South America. It took months. How cool is that we have cars and roads and signs that say, go this speed so that we're all safe doing it. You can always be thankful for stuff. And when you do, you get joy, you get happiness. You know, with my daughter, what could I say? Really, what could I say when I go down and there's her stuff? Yeah, I'm so grateful I have her. Who is so involved with so many other things that are great for her that she doesn't have time to clean, so I know she's doing good stuff. And when I look at all the stuff that she's doing, I see she's doing really interesting things. Now, that's my relationship with her. Now, if that's my self-talk, how's our relationship going to be? Good, bad, pleasant, unpleasant? It'll be tremendous, won't it? So glad you're in our family. So glad we have this cool family to be in. We get so upset at people. We forget how cool we are. We forget how wonderful it is to be at all. And that's what gratitude's about, is realizing how amazing everything really is. And when you do that, you can do it with anything. You know, you're sicker than a dog. Can you be thankful somehow? Grateful I'm not dead. Somebody else calls you a name. Thankful I have this place where I can work on being thankful for something. You see what I'm saying, though? We do have a choice. Now, your homework, here's what I'd like you